Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta.
And this week we're talking about Chapter 17. I think this is the third time we've talked about Chapter 17 in Stephen L. Kent's The Ultimate History of Video Games Volume 2. This is a very long chapter, so we're finishing it up today. And it's all about EA and Activision. We're in like the mid to late 2000s, right? Like kind of ending here on about 2010, maybe 2012.
We're going to kind of time jump a little bit this episode because Kent talks about still some Activision and EA history, but then it kind of jumps forward to like what made them who they are today. And guess what? Spoilers, it's not good. So, so the first section we're going to discuss is called It's the End of Activision as We Know It. And this shows the progression leading up to the merger of Activision and Blizzard into Activision Blizzard, which is a not so creative name, but hey, they do what they got to do. So as always, the book goes into greater detail, but it starts with Ken Williams and his wife Roberta Williams creating Sierra Online, which would eventually become Sierra Entertainment, and they made games like King's Quest and Leisure Suit Larry. Sierra also published Half-Life and a lot of other big games. They were a big publisher as well, and they were kind of one of the first big home computer conglomerates, I guess. That's probably not the wrong word. I'm probably using that word wrong, but big company, okay? So Sierra bought some companies, but then they were eventually bought by CompuCard International, aka CUC International is what they're known as. And CUC also absorbed Bob and Jan Davidson's company, Davidson and Associates, and they were famous for edutainment games, specifically the Blaster games. I'm talking Math Blaster, Reading Blaster, Algebra Blaster. Is that like... It's algebra.
Algebra. I read this as Algae Blaster, and I was like trying to search for this game where it's like, Math Blaster, Reading Blaster, getting rid of algae? What?
Dude, you have no idea how long it took me writing the notes to put that together, that it's not algae, as in the water-based plant life.
Yeah, it's a Algebra Blaster. I played a lot of Math Blaster back in the day.
Oh,
Did you play
too.
Math Blaster?
Oh, yeah.
Woo! I had
Math Blaster slaps.
Yep, I had the CD for a Macintosh. It wasn't the original Math Blaster. It was like probably some enhanced, upgraded version for the Macintosh. And I played a lot of Math Blaster. It was so fun with like the shooting garbage and the doing the numbers, which makes it sound like I've never played Math Blaster before, but I have. I've definitely played Math Blaster.
Makes it sound like you've never done math before.
Doing the numbers and the adding and subtracting and the reading and Reading Blaster.
Tyler, how was math class today? Oh, we were doing the numbers, blasting them.
Blasting the numbers. It was a really great day at the business factory.
So Davidson and Associates was later acquired by CUC, and then CUC got something really, really special. And we're talking about Blizzard Entertainment, founded by 3 UCLA graduates in 1991, Michael Morheim, Alan Adham, and Frank Pierce. And I hope I'm saying their names right. I think I am.
Yeah, that seems right to me.
But Blizzard started with a little game called Warcraft, Orcs, and Humans, which I didn't play a lot of personally. I played a lot of Warcraft 2, but I did play it a little bit, the first one.
I played more Warcraft 3 than anything else. That was probably my first Blizzard. Well, maybe I played a little bit of StarCraft back in the day, way back in the day.
Yeah, Warcraft 2 was my first foray into Blizzard games, and I did like hearing the peons talk. Because they'd be like, job's done, and they'd like go on and do stuff. It was really fun. So I think what really stuck with me about this section, though, is how Warcraft was by no means a new idea. Like we think about Warcraft now being like, that's so revolutionary, but here's a quote from the book on where the idea for Warcraft came from. Warcraft borrowed most of its play mechanics from a Virgin Interactive game called Dune 2: The Building of a Dynasty, which borrowed rather heavily from Herzog's Way, an early game for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive, which in turn borrowed from the game Herzog, a Technosoft title released in Japan for the MSX and NEC PC-88 computers in 1988. So Warcraft was by no means created in a vacuum, is what we're trying to say.
Yeah, it was really piecing together like parts of a genre from other things and just really putting that Blizzard polish on top of it that we all know so well.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to talk about this later today when we talk about what you've been playing. It's more of a what you've been watching thing, but I've been watching a lot of documentaries on like Half-Life and Portal, and I always thought Portal was like a new idea for a game, But Portal was definitely created, or the skeleton of Portal was created by some DigiPen students here in Seattle before, and then Valve purchased their game and like took them in, and that's where Portal came from. I had no idea. That's kind of cool. That's a little side tangent there, but it's still history, so it feels good. Okay, so CUC gets Blizzard as part of the Davidson and Associates deal, because Davidson and Associates had Blizzard, then the CUC takes over Davidson and Associates, but then the CUC is taking over by this French conglomerate, and I know I'm using the term correctly this time, Vivendi. And we've all heard of Vivendi, I think. They're kind of popular.
Yeah.
They were
Delilah's
around.
heard of Vivendi. We can hear her.
Oh my gosh. She
crowing
is
away.
She is screaming her head off, but if I open the door, it's not going to help. It's not going to help at all. It's just going to make it way louder. So,
all right, podcast producer Delilah.
She's actually really mad she's not allowed to produce right now. That's what's going on. So, now we're at the moment. Vivendi approaches Bobby Kotick of Activision about acquiring them. And at first, Kotick is not into the deal. He doesn't like the deal. So Vivendi CEO Jean-Bernard Levy makes the deal a little bit sweeter by saying Vivendi will merge Activision and Blizzard. And Vivendi will be the majority owner. But this would mean that Bobby Kotick would now control the world's most lucrative computer game company. And why is it so lucrative? Because this deal took place in 2007, and in 2004, Blizzard released a small indie title called World of Warcraft.
Oh, boy. Small indie game indeed.
Small indie game indeed. And World of Warcraft made over $180 million per month.
Wow. 2007 would have been, that would have been like between Burning Crusade and Lich King, and that was like, I think Lich King was like the height of subscriber count for World of Warcraft, just really raking it in.
Yeah, I'm going off memory here, but I'm pretty sure the book says at one point it was like 12 million subscribers.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So that's a deal that Kotick just can't refuse. And on December 2nd, 2007, Vivendi announced their plan to purchase 52% stake in Activision for $1.7 billion, which that's 2007. Moly. So billions, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Then. I know it doesn't seem like much now because with all the acquisitions happening this year, but it's still quite a bit of money.
It was back in the day, though. And video games in general were just a much smaller market. Like, you have to all think about it in context of the time.
Yeah. And the Activision stockholders, I should say, are pretty pumped by this deal because they now know they're going to get that sweet Blizzard money coming in. But fans of Blizzard games are pretty nervous. And Michael Morhaime, who is now the president of Activision Blizzard, tries to ease the fans a little bit by saying, quote, fans shouldn't really see any changes. We're always trying to improve and make our games better. I wouldn't really expect the fans to notice a difference. And I just want to say, I wonder how that goes later on down the line.
Well, maybe at first I believe that, but I think as Activision gets more of its hooks in and sees that money rolling in, they want to keep that train rolling, I think.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about that later, but the next section, which is titled, quote, The Most Hated Company in America. And guess what it's about? It's about Electronic Arts.
Oh my gosh. I have a bit to say here. We should talk, let's explain all this, but I have some stuff to say about this.
Okay, before I end the section, you can say your piece about EA, but and this is where the timeline jumps ahead, because we were talking like 2007, we're now just going to jump to 2012. And we're starting when The Consumerist, who runs an annual reader poll to determine the worst company in America, had EA in first place in 2012 after the votes were tallied. And you're like, oh, that's pretty bad. Well, it got worse because EA won again in 2013.
One in air quotes here.
Yeah, they're the only company to win 2 times.
Oh my gosh.
Poll. And I want you to keep in mind that Kent points out this happened during Comcast being awful, AIG, the toxic loan folks that caused the recession, and BP, British Petroleum, spilling oil in the Gulf of Mexico. And yet EA still won the trophy 2 years in a row. So, yeah, EA has a serious image problem, to say the least. And this was due to the fact that many people saw their games as reworks of existing ones. And I didn't really put this together that much, but we know about Rock Band and Guitar Hero. We talked about that last episode, but there was also Skate to Tony Hawk.
I don't consider those the same thing, though.
Me too. And this other one was kind of a stretch, which was Godfather to GTA.
Oh, no, I don't think Godfather was EA's answer to GTA.
And EA even had a special group form for their company called Rep Rehab, where EA employees would try to meet, usually on a Monday, and figure out how they could fix the company's reputation. And guess what? They're still working on it. They're trying to figure it out right now.
they're trying, but they keep making mistakes.
Yeah, and I also kind of disagree with this sentiment, too, about Rock Band and Guitar Hero and Skate to Tony Hawk. Really, it's them answering to the consumer trends at the time. But also, Skate and Tony Hawk are very different games.
Yeah, they look the same because they're both skateboarding games, but they're not the same game. I buy it with Rock Band and Guitar Hero. Like, they're basically the same thing, right? But Skate and Tony Hawk are vastly different games. Like, a fan of Skate is not automatically a fan of Tony Hawk or vice versa. Like, they're not the same.
Yeah, and I think the Godfather to GTA comparison was only done because Godfather was a story-based game with open worlds that you'd run around in.
Yeah.
So, and because it's about crime, they're like, oh, this must be like GTA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I don't like that comparison.
So the problem got much worse shortly after EA got the Star Wars license from Disney in 2015. And first we have Star Wars Battlefront 1, which I played this, and I'm going to say it's a good game. I liked it. It was kind of a bummer to me that it was multiplayer only, but still a strong showing. And I mean, especially for me, because I was a fan of the older Battlefront games that you play on PC or PlayStation. I liked those ones.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good game. But then the problem came in 2017. And we're about to talk about Star Wars Battlefront 2. And this game, in the beginning, was littered with breaking microtransactions. So here's what happened. Players used star cards in both Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2. And those would improve their weapons, armor, abilities, etc. But in Battlefront 2, you could purchase your star cards at first with real money.
Okay.
So it felt pay to win. That's pay to win.
Yeah,
right?
if you can buy stat upgrades, basically, in a roundabout way.
Yeah, well, it gets even worse than that, because you don't just buy star cards. You get them in loot crates that supply random star cards. So it's like opening magic packs or Pokemon card packs, and you don't know what you're going to get.
Wow. So you can't even choose what you're paying to win at. You just kind of pay a lot of money and hope you win at everything.
Yeah. In a way, it makes it less pay to win because it's gambling, but it's gambling is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it takes advantage of a certain like quirk in some people that will make them pay a lot more to get the stats they want.
You can't choose the exact stat you want, but you can still pay for better stats. You just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And players also could buy these crystals they could use to buy loot crates. And you could also use like earned in-game credits, like galactic credits, like in Star Wars, to buy like heroes and weapons from the store. But they took way too long to unlock. Like the game purposefully slowed you down.
It was like 100 hours or something to unlock, like Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader or whatever.
And this leads to an amazing moment on the internet when Reddit user MBM Maverick on November 12th, 2017 said, quote, "Seriously? I paid $80 to have Vader locked? This is a joke. I'll be contacting EA support for a refund. I can't even play effing Darth Vader? Disgusting. This age of microtransactions has gone way too far. Leave it to EA, though, to stretch the boundaries." End quote. And that was fine, right? Your typical internet
Somebody mad
gripe.
about games. It's all good.
Yeah, it happens on the internet all the time. The real flub comes from EA's response. And this is the only real long quote I'm going to read in the book this episode, because I feel like you got to get the whole quote to experience it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is EA's response. This is from a member of the EA community team. They said, quote, "The intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment for unlocking different heroes. As for cost, we selected initial values based upon data from the open beta and other adjustments made to milestone rewards before launch. Among other things, we're looking at average per player credit earn rates on a daily basis, and we'll be making constant adjustments to ensure that players have challenges that are compelling, rewarding, and of course, attainable via gameplay. We appreciate the candid feedback and the passion the community has put forth around the current topics here on Reddit, our forums, and across numerous social media outlets. Our team will continue to make changes and monitor community feedback and update everyone as soon and as often as we can. Note, there is no sorry in that quote.
Nope.
In any way, shape, or form, or we're working on this, we feel really bad about it, we noticed the problem. It's just, that's what we decided.
This is actually fine. I feel so bad for the person that had to write that because they knew when they pressed send that this was going to be a disaster.
Oh, yeah. And this post from EA, according to the Guinness Book of World Records, is still the most downvoted Reddit post in history, with 667,821 downvotes on Reddit.
Wow.
Yeah, because EA just didn't apologize. They only held out until the fan criticism became so bad that they were worried they would lose the Star Wars license from Disney. Mm-hmm. So they unlocked all the heroes and made the loot boxes cosmetic items only, which, to be fair, they should have done in the beginning. And that's like the only way I think you're going to have a loot box system is if it's cosmetics. Yeah. Because then the people that want to pay for those can pay for those, and the people that don't, like me, just don't. Right?
Yeah.
I'm proud to say I still haven't purchased anything with real money in Destiny, except for that one time I got free in-game silver. But Tyler and I had the same experience because we both got it for just playing the game. And we bought the Broom Sparrows, and then the Broom Sparrows were on the Bright Dust store, which is essentially the free unlock by playing the game currency you get 2 weeks later.
Never again. Never again.
Never again. So if you're going to have a loot box system, make it about fashion. I think that's what we can all agree on.
That's right.
And EA still hasn't recovered from this, though. They are still very much considered like an evil empire of games. And the book briefly mentions it, but we're not even going to touch on the huge blow up of the Mass Effect 3 ending.
Gosh. Okay. Can I say my thing now?
You can jump in there. Just jump on in there.
Here's the thing. We're talking about video games. They won some stupid contest to be the worst company in America against British Petroleum during the time of the Gulf of Mexico oil spill, right? They're literally and directly destroying the planet, but somehow freaking video games are the worst thing in the world because you can't play as Darth Vader in your stupid video game. I'm sorry. I love video games, but I get so mad about this because this is these are two things on a different level. And it's video games. Just don't buy it if you don't want to play it, Just don't buy it. I hate it so much. I get so mad about it.
I think it really shows the culture of distraction and escapism present in the United States. You see horrible things on the news so much that you're only going to get fired up about your video game.
Oh, I'm so mad about my Darth Vader. And to be fair, they messed up a lot. I'm not saying that Battlefront 2 is a great thing or they did a good job there, but I'm on the scale of things that are bad in this world, you had the option to choose something so much worse, and yet somehow gamers got all righteous about this and were like, no, EA is the worst. You know what you can do when you don't want to play an EA game? You can not buy it. You don't have to play it. It doesn't have to be in your life. You know what happens when the planet gets destroyed by oil spills? You have to deal with that no matter what. I'm sorry, EA is not the worst company in the world.
Oh, they are pretty bad. That's a great take. I'm so excited.
I get so that thing fires me up. Seriously, the people getting mad about Darth Vader and
Well, the Mass Effect 3 thing I didn't really put in here. One, because it wasn't in the book, but two, because I still haven't played Mass Effect 3 and I don't want to spoil the ending for myself.
Yeah, that was a stupid thing too. I don't know.
I just remember the internet freaking out about it when it happened.
It's one thing to have a bad ending in a game, and I guess the original ending for it was pretty bad. When I played through it after they sort of air quotes fixed it, and it wasn't my favorite thing in the world. I didn't think it was this massive satisfying ending, but it's why people get so mad about stuff?
Can I take a guess? Can I take a guess what happens?
Sure.
Shepard saves the universe and then joins Madden Football. Is that what happens?
That's what happens, yeah. Wow. Wow, that's a really good guess.
I knew it. It's EA. They love their crossover stuff. Okay.
Yeah,
that was good. I appreciate that we had this side tangent.
Sorry.
And if you have something to say,
get all fired up.
You should send us an email at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com because that's what we want to hear from you.
Yeah, tell me why EA is worse than BP.
That, if someone can make that argument, that's pretty impressive. Okay. Yeah. So we should talk more. We talked about EA. EA is in the down in the dumps, right?
Are they though? Because they're still making more money than anything else in the world. We also need to redefine success here and to say we haven't recovered from this, because they don't have to recover from it. They make so much money. They're not like on the verge of failing because Battlefront 2 had bad microtransactions in it, right? Like they don't need to recover from this.
Okay, how about this? How about EA is down in the dumps optics-wise?
Optics-wise, sure, yeah.
Okay, but optics-wise, things are also not well at Activision Blizzard. So a storm is brewing between Bobby Kotick and his new friends at Vivendi. Okay, so Kotick was accused of multiple things by Vivendi executives, such as stock manipulation and making sketchy, like self-serving secret deals behind closed doors.
Ooh,
and this kind
scandalous.
of gets... Yeah, so real crimes, classic real crimes.
Yeah,
so,
real actual crimes, not keeping your Darth Vader locked behind a paywall.
Exactly. So in 2013, Activision Blizzard and Vivendi had a very expensive breakup. And Michael Morhaime, then president and one of the original 3 founders of Blizzard, confirmed it cost $22 billion for this breakup to happen. $2.34 billion of that was paid by a consortium led by Bobby Kotick and Brian Kelly, who was a co-chairman of Activision. And this is also when the culture of Blizzard starts falling apart as well. At first, many of the employees say they don't even feel Activision's presence in their day-to-day lives. They just see Activision on their pay stubs and think, oh, okay, that's a thing. Yeah. And Blizzard's early culture is very well respected. It consisted of 8 core values, and those core values were gameplay first, commit to quality, play nice, play fair, embrace your inner geek, every voice matters, think globally, lead responsibly, and learn to grow. So those are their 8 core values. Yeah, right? Good. And I should also mention that they were really admired, especially the 3 founders, for following those values up to this point, right? They really tried to strive for that. And Blizzard still made some great games after they became Activision Blizzard. They had StarCraft 2, Diablo 3, Hearthstone, Heroes of the Storm, Overwatch. But when the Vivendi deal ended, things started to take a turn at Activision Blizzard. And they first canceled Blizzard's big planned 2014 MMO that was codenamed Project Titan. And then things started to feel a lot more corporate. There were more aggressive deadlines, there were budget cuts, and pressure in general just to get things done. Michael Morhaime resigned in 2018, and that was a huge symbolic blow to the company. Essentially, many saw Michael Morhaime leaving as the essence of those, 8 core values of Blizzard also leaving, because he was those core values, and everyone thought he lived up to those. Then, on February 11th, 2018, Activision Blizzard announced that they were laying off 800 employees. 3 days later, they reported revenues of $7.5 billion, which were then record profits.
Ugh.
And Kent's like, while those are unrelated, you can definitely see where this is going.
Yeah.
Kent says this, quote, "Judging by the chatter on the internet, Activision replaced Electronic Arts as the most hated company in video games on February 14th, 2019. Because it was then that there was a big misstep. They banned Blitzchung, who was a professional esports athlete, from playing Hearthstone for 1 year after he showed support for Hong Kong during the Hearthstone Grandmasters tournament in 2019.
Yeah, that was pretty bad, because they were like, oh, we just don't want anybody to say anything political, but it was like, okay, but that one specifically is the one you're going to ban? That was pretty, yeah.
Yeah, and this is all a pretty big bummer. I mean, this whole section is kind of a big bummer when you talk about both EA and you talk about Activision Blizzard, but I do think the way Kent wrapped up the chapter is really nice. He talks about how Activision Blizzard's own employees taped up the compass that is underneath the 12-foot statue of an orc riding a warg outside of their headquarters. And the compass has 8 points, and on each point is one of the core values of Blizzard's. And the employees specifically covered in tape think globally and every voice matters as their way of protesting. And I'm like, it's hard because people's dream is to work in video games, and then these things happen. Mm-hmm. But as video games have become so huge, they've also become a driving force in the economy and therefore politically. So I'm glad the employees said something and protested, but it doesn't make the situation any less sad. And between that and then EA, because for me, the only thing that really grinds my gears, if I'm going to sound like everyone's dad for a second, about EA is I do fully believe that loot boxes in video games really instill a feeling of gambling in children. Mm-hmm. And that's, to me, the worst part of what EA is. Obviously, I agree with you, Tyler, that overall, an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico is much worse than what EA did. But also, you're instilling this value of gambling in children, kind of like how Chuck E. Cheese is too. You know, it's like, I don't know if this is something we should really be showing our kids. But then again, I'm not an expert on that. That's just how I feel. So that's kind of where we're left off there with Activision and EA and their image problem.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say EA isn't bad. I just like on a scale of badness, some things are worse than others. And if we're going to be comparing companies to each other, we need to be on the larger scale, not the small scale.
And if we're going to if you have thoughts and opinions on this, we do really want to hear from you, even if especially if they disagree.
I'd love to hear
what you say, and you can say it in a very eloquent email instead of me stuttering over myself like I do all the time, which is great.
The next section is called Crescendo, because it's all about like rhythm games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band. And so something that Activision and EA were also trading blows on during this time is, can I get a drum roll, please, Mike?
Ooh.
For effect, because a drum roll is thematically relevant. Rhythm games. Thank you. This is specifically rhythm games that included fake plastic instruments to simulate playing on stage. It's not new for companies to compete with each other with like similar themes. We had like fighting games in the 90s, first-person shooter games in the 90s, platform games in the 90s. Lots of games in the 90s were competing with each other, and they still do today. But by 2009, the fake plastic instrument genre, of which I am a fan, started to get a little bit stale. And I think we've talked about this in past episodes. We both totally love Rock Band, Guitar Hero games.
Oh, yeah. We really do love this one that we're about to talk about, too. At least I do.
Yeah. But by 2009, it was getting a little bit stale. The gameplay had been kind of perfected with Rock Band 3. That was in 2010. That was like the peak of gameplay because they had added the keyboard and stuff. And after that, it's kind of just all song packs and DLC. And because both companies were in on it, competing with each other, we just got like double of everything for a few years. We got Rock Band games, we got Guitar Hero games, and all they had to do to churn out a new Rock Band game or a new Guitar Hero game was to just license some music. And at the height of this craze, I imagine, I don't know for sure, but I imagine those licenses were pretty easy to get because they were great advertising for music. Like, how much music did you find on Guitar Hero games that you then became a fan of later in life, and you could like describe your music taste as Guitar Hero?
Oh, the song Black Magic Woman that was on one of the Guitar Hero games. I immediately bought that by totally legal means off the internet when I heard it the first time.
Oh man, so much great music was on those games. That and Tony Hawk games. Like my musical taste can be summed up as Rock Band, Guitar Hero, and Tony Hawk.
For sure. I also loved the song Maps. By the
Yeah. They're one of my favorite bands of all time now, specifically because of the first Rock Band had Maps on it.
I would always sing it, and my friends would hate that song, so I made a point to do it every time. Because we would have like parties at our house where you play Rock Band, and so it's like, well, I'm going to annoy them real quick because I think it's funny.
And the drums are so fun on it. Like
they are so fun.
They look really complicated, but they're not that hard if you put in a little bit of time to learn them. And so you can like impress people by playing the drums on the song because they're not actually that hard. They just look really hard, and they're very satisfying. I love that song. Such a good song.
I'm going to listen to that song after this.
Oh yeah. So Activision even started a whole studio dedicated to pumping out Guitar Hero games. It was Budcat Creations, which made the Wii and PS2 versions of almost every Guitar Hero game until Guitar Hero 5. They were also the only major development studio located in Iowa, so that's neat, I guess.
Good for you, Iowa. The breadbasket of video games.
That's right. In 2009, Activision attained the holy... No, not Activision. It was EA that attained the holy grail of music licenses. And that's the Beatles. And if I'm not mistaken, the Beatles had actually never released any of their music on digital storefronts up to this point. So this was actually the first time their music had ever been available like in a downloaded format or a digital format.
They were one of the last holdouts for Apple to get. Right. And it was a big deal when Apple got them.
Yeah. Because they were salty about Apple getting to the music business. Have you heard this story before?
Well, it's because Apple Corp was the name of their company, right?
Right.
And then Apple Computers takes it,
Yeah, and they sued them in like the 70s or the 80s, and they were like, Apple's like, well, we're not in the music business. Nobody will ever confuse us. It's going to be fine. And Apple Corp was like, okay, it's fine. Or maybe the judge said, okay, it's fine, but you have to promise that you never get into the music business. And in the 70s and 80s, Apple was like, we make computers, so why would we ever get into the music business? And then they did. So Apple Corp was pretty mad at them and never went on to iTunes because they were still pretty mad.
What? I just realized Apple Core is like a pun.
Yeah.
I never put that together. And just
Apple
seeing
Corpse.
you saying it, yeah. And then, oh my gosh, I can't believe I never put that together. Okay, sorry. I'm embarrassed.
It's okay. You have to say it out loud. It takes a little while for you to like say it out loud.
Yeah,
like,
if you just read it for some reason, I always say like Apple Corp, but yeah, Apple Core. Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess in 2010, the money got too good for the Beatles to pass up. And it was projected to sell so well. This was going to be of these great selling Guitar Hero and Rock Band games, the Beatles Rock Band was going to be the best selling of them all because it was the Beatles. And I think it was not like out of touch to say that like, yeah, the Beatles would be a really driving force in maybe the best selling Rock Band game ever. But it didn't do well. Because 2010 was the year that the recession caught up with rhythm games. And while it did outsell all the Guitar Hero and Rock Band games, I think by 2010, the combination of the recession hitting and people not having as much disposable income combined with the oversaturation of the market with just tons of these games and everybody already had one, and the fact that to get a full set of this stuff was like pretty expensive. It was like $200 to get guitars and drums and microphones and stuff.
The limited edition one with all the stuff that was Beatles themed for this was $250.
Yeah. And people didn't have that kind of disposable income in 2010.
I was in college. I did not. I also remember we talked about this a couple episodes ago, didn't we? When we had a question on, was it the mailbag about games that are hyped? Because I talked about the hype for Beatles Rock Band was real.
Yeah.
In 2010. It was on ads everywhere. People were super excited about it because of that licensing thing. And yeah, it just flopped.
Just everything dove right off a cliff. All rhythm games did. Beatles Rock Band did the best of those things. They still outsold everything else, but everything had just taken a giant dive at that point. So it didn't end up doing that well. I always loved this genre. We talked about it before. I think some people thought it was stupid because you're like not really playing instruments or whatever. But I always kind of saw it as like an extension of karaoke. Like I didn't see it as like, oh, this is people going up on stage to play an actual thing. I saw it as like nobody goes to karaoke to like hear great singing, although sometimes you do. But like you're just going there to have a good time and like pretend you're a rock star, right? You don't have to be good at karaoke or good at singing to have a good time at karaoke. And I think Rock Band and Guitar Hero is like the same way of sort of extending that from singing to instruments, where it's like you're not actually playing it. Nobody thinks they're actually playing it, but they're having fun pretending, right? And like there's some skill there, and it's like it's just fun. I think
it's a party.
It's
a fun party, and that's why I loved it. Yeah,
yeah, and I miss those. I miss Rock Band parties.
Also, it might be the last time I really think of myself as playing like co-op in a living room with friends. Was this genre?
Yeah,
I did it a couple times with like the Mario for Wii and stuff, but really it was Rock Band that like brought that last back before it kind of went away.
Yeah. And it was like when everybody was in and like watching and like singing along and having so much fun, like those are some good parties, good times. I think the novelty just kind of wore off after a while.
Definitely.
But plastic instrument games weren't the only thing falling over for Activision at this point, because Tony Hawk, the annual cash cow, they had been putting out a new game every year for like a decade, had also taken a plastic peripheral path. Wow, that was an alliteration.
That's hard to say.
Yeah, plastic peripheral path. Tony Hawk's Ride had like this really stupid skateboard peripheral. And, it was a bad game regardless of the accessory. It was like a skateboard that you're supposed to stand on that you didn't really do anything with, but you like kind of pretended to skateboard on it. It was like sort of a halfway, like no actual skateboarding talent was necessary for it. But it was just like, why not just give me a regular controller for this? You weren't really doing anything with it. But it was $120, and it just did awful. Like it was bad. The game itself was bad, and the accessory did not make it more fun. So they thought, well, why not do it again? So they released another one. Tony Hawk Shred came out a year later, and it only sold 3,000 copies in its first week.
That is so incredibly low. That is like for this time period, that is so low.
Yeah, because I think the first one wasn't very exciting for people, I don't think. But they got some people to buy it because they were like, okay, let's see what this is. Maybe it'll be fun, right? And then after that, it was like, fool me once, fool me twice, shame on me. So they didn't buy it the second time. And I don't think this one is due to oversaturation like Rock Band and Guitar Hero. I think it was just a case of like they were trying to apply the accessory thing from Rock Band and Guitar Hero to other genres, and it just didn't work out. I think it's cool they tried, because what they saw in the market was like, oh, people want these plastic peripherals. Like, can we put these in more games? And I think Tony Hawk is sort of a natural thing for somebody who doesn't make games to assume would be really fun. And so they were just like, greenlit, Tony Hawk Ride, go make a plastic skateboard game. And I'm sure the developers, when they were making it, they were like, this is not very good, but we have a year to make this game and we're getting paid, so let's do it.
Yeah, from like an executive's point of view, I'm sure you're like, oh yeah, the Guitar Hero Rock Band games do great because they have these fun little plastic instruments. So what's our other big series we could put plastic things into?
Right.
You know, and that was just the instant thought in the meeting.
Right.
And then developers are like, what? Okay, yeah. I guess you're paying me to do it, so I'll do it. But
yeah, thinking that like they had cracked the code, like this is what people want. They want plastic peripherals, so we'll give them one for Tony Hawk. And it did not work. They were also, this was like on the tail end of an unbroken decade-long yearly streak of releases too. They were kind of running out material. I think times were changing too. Like the days of the early 2000s, like the TV show Jackass and like the pop punk aesthetic, like that, all that stuff was sort of like gone now. And I think Tony Hawk is kind of a relic of that time.
100%. That is definitely what's going on.
Yeah. And so like Shred and Ride are like, oh, they destroyed the Tony Hawk franchise. But honestly, I think culture had just moved on. I think even if they just made 2 more regular old Tony Hawk games, they still would have not done very well.
Yeah, I remember playing older, like before Shred and Ride, playing like Tony Hawk's American Wasteland and Underground and Project 8. And those series, while still Tony Hawk, just felt very repetitive. Like,
yeah.
The Tony Hawk's 1 and 2 and 3, I think we can all agree are like the best. Felt like new and fresh every time because they kept adding new things to it. But then after Tony Hawk 3, they kind of just kept the same thing. Like they added no new tricks. Like I think, doesn't 3 add manuals?
3 added reverts.
Okay.
Yeah. And 4 added like spine transfers and like they all kind of add stuff. And Underground kind of added the open world element and like a story to it, which was kind of cool.
To me, it just didn't really work as well. I remember playing Underground and like it just didn't, like the fun was playing the level and trying to get all the stuff done in one go.
Yeah, it felt like they were trying to make a Viva La Bam movie or something out of the story, and I'm sure it resonated with some kids at the time. I think I was a little bit too old for it by the time Underground had come out.
Maybe. I rented it, and it was weird, but I played it. I tried it. Yeah, so
they're okay. But I think you're right. Like by the time you get to Wasteland and then Project 8, it's like, okay, this series is kind of over. But I do think that with the sort of revival of 2000s aesthetic that's sort of happening right now, there's like a pop punk resurgence coming on. Jackass Forever just came out. The movie,
I just watched
doing pretty well. Is it good?
I thought it was very funny. Let me tell you what they did. They really upped the male nudity in a hilarious way. I'll tell you that much. Great.
I love it. Maybe I'll watch that.
Things I thought I would never say on my video game history podcast.
So I think with like this sort of slight resurgence of that, like, because you've got all these new pop punk albums coming out. Avril Lavigne's album just came out, which I have enjoyed. Machine Gun Kelly has like his pop punk stuff. Basically anything with Travis Barker is solid gold at this point. Like there's kind of a resurgence happening there, and I think Tony Hawk maybe could make a comeback these days. The remake of 1 and 2 was really good, and I think a well-made modern Tony Hawk game could really, like, if they aimed it at the like 30 to 40-year-old millennial market and not at like the teenager market, I think there's something that could happen there today.
What we're trying to say is bring back tapes. Unlock back tapes.
I just want to hit the secret tape in every level.
That's what I want to do too. Yeah, it's great.
I would love to hear from our audience on this one because, send us an email, codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com, because maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe there isn't something here. Maybe I'm just nostalgic. I just got finished listening to a brand new Avril Lavigne album that I haven't listened to her in like 20 years. So, maybe I'm just feeling nostalgic.
Maybe you had to go and make things so complicated.
Maybe I went and made things too complicated. But Activision had even more yearly franchises at this point. This was kind of their thing, this yearly franchise thing. Infinity Ward made the Call of Duty games, and by the end of the 2000s, it was selling more than EA's Madden series, which is pretty crazy. That's EA's, their biggest like yearly annual franchise. Activision had commissioned Treyarch, which was a studio known for Tony Hawk ports and the Spider-Man movie tie-ins, and they had them make more Call of Duty games on a 2-year cadence. So 1 year would be Infinity Ward, then the next would be a Treyarch game, and that gave them their yearly release schedule still, but each game got 2 years of development time, which is not necessarily a system I dislike, especially because I think both sort of lines of games, you had the Modern Warfare series and then you had the Black Ops series, they were similar enough that they were still both Call of Duty games, but they were different enough that they sort of had their own identities, and I think that was really cool to get like one game like back and forth for a few years. And then in 2013, they added a third studio, Sledgehammer Games. So now each Call of Duty game had 3 years in the oven, which I still think is a pretty cool way to do it. I don't know if yearly Call of Duty releases at this point is the best thing in the world, but for a little while there, I think they were consistently putting out quality, and I think it has to do with that multiple studio model. What do you think, Mike?
I think, yeah, I agree. It worked really well, and then I remember a distinct cutoff point with Ghosts. Like, I was the only person in my friend group that liked Call of Duty Ghosts.
Yeah.
And then
that was Sledgehammer one?
I am not sure.
Was that Infinity Ward?
It might have been Infinity Ward, because it was after a Black Ops game, if I recall. And then after that was the Advanced Warfare one that had Kevin Spacey in it, if I'm remembering my timeline.
Oh, yeah. That one was Sledgehammer, I think.
Yeah, and so the Ghosts one was kind of not so well received, and then it really started going downhill with Advanced Warfare. So I kind of think Ghosts was like the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Even though Ghosts has a campaign that ends on a cliffhanger that I was actually kind of like into, even though the story was okay, and we're never going to see that in the light of day ever again. It's like it just they gave up on Ghosts, which is fine. But I'm just like, yeah, it definitely was the beginning of the end, I feel.
Yeah.
Although you could argue the resurgence with Warzone and then the Modern Warfare reboot, brought it all back.
I did like the Modern Warfare reboot.
I did too.
And Kent talks specifically in the book, he talks about Modern Warfare 2 back in 2009, the campaign, which I remember vividly because not only that was that the first COD game that I got hyped for before release, it was also really controversial with the no Russian level. You know which one I'm talking about. There was like an option. There's like a mission where you are an undercover agent and you're like sort of taking part in like a terrorist attack on a airport in Russia, and you kind of have the option to kill a lot of civilians. You don't have to, but it was very, very controversial. And I think they even give you, when you boot that game up still, they give you the option to skip that level. And like, there's no penalty for skipping it. There are no achievements related to it or anything like that. So you can just like not do that level, which I thought was cool, but also feels like unnecessary. I think if you're playing a Call of Duty game, you kind of know what you're getting into. So
yeah, I was still blown away. Was it Modern Warfare 2 or Modern Warfare 1 where your guy dies in the nuclear explosion?
That's the first one. Yeah, that's the first.
That's the first time that they surprised me. When I'm like, oh, you're just going to kill this protagonist? And I was like, I like this game that you're getting, like, breaking the formula a little bit.
Yeah, and like there's a whole mission that's just you sort of like crawling around while you just succumb to your injuries, which is really dark, really bleak, but it was cool.
Man, I got some things to tell you after the podcast about Half-Life and some things I've heard about that game that made it even more creepy to me.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it after the show because I'm going to save it for a Half-Life episode again. So,
all right. Well, Modern Warfare 2 sold like hotcakes and gangbusters, and I count myself among the purchasers of that game for PC. There's a little bit of drama here with the heads of Infinity Ward, because they went to Activision headquarters after the release of Modern Warfare 2, and they thought they were going to Activision, and then Activision was going to be like, great job, Modern Warfare 2 is the biggest thing that ever sold ever. Here's a bunch of money and, a crown, and like here's a cool chair to sit in. But instead, they got fired, which was not what they were expecting. And their lawyer explained it as Activision trying to gain control over Infinity Ward, as well as getting out of paying Vince Zampella and Jason West, those are the heads of Infinity Ward, getting out of paying them the portion of royalties that they were owed. I think we talked about this when we talked about Call of Duty a while back, but we can bring it up here again. Activision, however, claimed that Zampella and West were insubordinate and that they were even working with Electronic Arts to potentially disrupt Activision's cash cow by either defecting to a new studio at EA or taking Infinity Ward entirely. And nobody really knows for sure what's up, but those two did eventually go to EA after they were fired from Activision. And they formed Respawn Entertainment. So maybe Activision's accusations were not entirely without merit. But as the case played out in the public, it also became apparent that Activision had been looking for reasons to fire them. There was a whole project known as Project Icebreaker that had been commissioned at Activision to get dirt on them and build a case. They hired a contractor to hack their computers. It was a whole thing. Yeah,
I read this. I was very surprised that they were spending company time to get dirt on their own employees to fire them so they don't have to pay them the royalties.
Yeah, I think the royalties thing is a little bit flimsy. I think the thing that makes the most sense to me is that Activision somehow got word that they were talking with EA behind closed doors about like leaving, because they'd done that before. Remember, they worked at 2015, the studios that made Medal of Honor, and they sort of like snaked their way out and formed Infinity Ward and then made Call of Duty to compete directly with Medal of Honor. And now, like, so hearing that maybe they were going to do this again, I think it makes sense to be like, okay, we need to figure out how to get out of this with these guys because they've done this before and we're about to be the suckers here. I think the royalties themselves are like, it was like $20 million or something, which is a lot of money, but not for Activision. So I don't think that was the primary motivator, but especially if they thought that these two guys were going to stick around for a long time and continue to make games worth that level of royalties, I think they would much rather have them stay with Activision rather than just fire them so they could get a quick, not have to pay royalties boost. Yeah,
regardless, it felt really secret. It felt like something from Call of Duty Black Ops going on at work.
Yeah. Eventually, Activision sued EA after Zampella and West formed Respawn, but they settled out of court. No money exchanged hands. Nobody really knows how that went down. They probably had both like mutually got to the table and they were like, well, we've got this dirt on you. And they were like, well, we've got this on you. And then they just looked at each other and they were like, you want to just drop it? Yeah, okay, shake hands. We're done here.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, so Respawn eventually released Titanfall, which is like a futuristic military shooter that was actually pretty cool. They released Titanfall 2, which I'm told is one of the most underrated FPS campaigns in all history. And I think you've said that before. That it's very good.
I will die on this hill that Titanfall 2 is one of my favorite first-person shooter campaigns I've ever played. And that includes like Half-Life and Half-Life 2, and if you want to consider Portal 2.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I loved Titanfall 2. It's so good.
I gotta play
the campaign. I was too late to play the multiplayer because I got jumped on the party late, but I played a lot of Titanfall 1 multiplayer. But Titanfall 2's campaign, it's a great story. I recommend it to everyone I know.
Oh, I'm excited. I need to play it one of these days. I will. It's not very long either.
It's Game Pass, yeah.
Yeah. They also made Jedi Fallen Order, which I know that you loved. I did not, but I'm okay with that.
It's okay. There's that stupid boss.
Yeah. Well, I even beyond that, it was not speaking to me.
It is a Souls game essentially in Star Wars. I didn't even put that together until you told me that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I was playing Dark Souls kind of just with Star Wars.
Yeah. So the Call of Duty series continues smashing records. So it's clear that while the series wouldn't be here without Vince Zampella and Jason West, the people that Activision had put in charge of it after they left continue to do a great job, at least in terms of sales. Maybe you disagree if the games are any good. That's fine. And Kent ends the chapter saying, everybody won. You love to see it.
It's true. I think everyone did win financially for those companies. Like, even though their optics are bad still, because this is before all the Blizzard stuff came up too, about their workplace culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think they all won financially. And now we're all caught up with this last chapter about movies and video games, which I'm excited
one more chapter,
about.
And then we're going to have to actually go back to doing real work for this podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Or we find another book. We got a lot of book recommendations, so we can go find some books.
I'm pretty excited for Cliff Bleszinski's memoirs that come out in November. I'm going to read that book. I don't know if it'll be appropriate for the podcast, but I'm excited to read the book.
Well, we can read it and then see if it is appropriate.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do if it's like, you mean like material-wise inappropriate or just not history?
Yes, and I think while there will be a lot of video game history, especially around like Epic Games and all that stuff, I think it's more about his life. So while those are large parts of his life, I think there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that's like not relevant to the podcast. I also think that it is not appropriate in terms of just content level too.
Aren't we going to start our new feed, Codex After Dark? We're not going to do that?
We could do Codex After Dark, and we'll talk Cliff Bleszinski's new book. We'll get him on the podcast.
That's where we cover Lose Your Suit Larry. That's where we cover that game. All right. Well, Tyler, what you been playing?
Oh, man. Well, I've been traveling, and I've been just working so much these past 2 weeks. I brought a whole bunch of games with me to Spain when I was traveling there, and I didn't play any of them. Not a single one. But on the plane flight there, I played about 4 hours of Pokemon Legends Arceus, and it's cool. I like what you were saying about it, how it's like it's sort of like filling out a biology textbook about Pokemon rather than just capturing them and battling them, although you do a lot of that as well. It's a cool idea, and I had some fun with it with a few hours I played, but other than that, I've been trying to get back into Destiny since I got back. but I am still jet lagged after like a week, and I haven't been able to stay up very late, which is normally when I get all my Destiny gaming in. So that's about it. I played some League of Legends Wild Rift games recently. I'm trying to get to Platinum rank in there, and it's going okay so far. I've been playing like 1 or 2 in the mornings because I wake up wide awake at like 4:30 and everybody's asleep, so I need something to do while I'm lying there in bed. So I've been playing mobile games, and that's one of them. Yeah, that's about it. What have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing some Magic the Gathering Arena on my computer. Because I notice when I go play Magic with friends, I don't play with them for like a month or 2 at a time, and I forget the rules. So this is how I'm remembering. And then I've also been playing some Destiny 2, but the most exciting thing that's happened recently is I put Black Mesa on my wish list and it went on sale. So I picked up Black Mesa. This is the redone version of Half-Life 1.
Yeah, it's like a fan remake, right?
Yeah, it's a fan remake
Valve
that's
is cool
endorsed. Yeah, it's endorsed by Valve, and they like okayed everything. And I am on Chapter 5. We are hostiles, so I'm about to fight some soldiers. But what really is intriguing me about this, and I watched the no-clip documentary about this as well, is they completely redid the Zen levels.
Oh, that's good. Those were like the worst part of the original.
Yeah, they are completely redone. Almost like minus the final boss fight, I think everything has changed. But even the final boss fight mechanics have changed. I'm super excited to get to that point. But I'm really having fun. It looks really good. Everything is just crisp and runs well, and I'm super excited about it. And as a Half-Life fan, I'm like really into it. Because I just played the game Half-Life for the first time, it was last year, the year before. So it's all like fresh in my head. And it's really great. They also do a better job at leading you through puzzles. That's very noticeable. Like,
oh, good.
In Half-Life 1, when I played it for the show, I had to look at a lot of guides. And this, I don't know if it's because I'm playing it again, but it just seems way more straightforward. Like, you know where to go. They lead you to it, which is nice. It has just better elements of game design in that way, I think. So I'm excited about it, but I'm going to keep playing that. I'm having a good time.
Good. Nice.
You want to read some emails? I'll read the first one here if you'd like.
Sure.
I'm going to read Alex's email. So this is from Alex. It's titled Pokemon. Hey guys, Alex here. I know Red and or Blue was your guys' favorite first Pokemon game, but for me, it was Gen 3 and 4. But I love the game so much, I actually own the entire series all the way up to Sword and Shield. I am very fortunate to have all these games, including special editions and some Japanese imports. I used to say I would sell all the games in the collection, but I feel like I am in too deep into collecting. I have since broadened my horizons and now collect GBA games and have several in-box Game Boy Advance games.
Nice.
That's awesome, Alex. Thank you for sending us that email. Yeah, I mean, collecting, you collect and then you're like, I'm going to get rid of this one day. And it's like, no,
nope,
I can't.
I can't. Yeah.
That's why I have all this Lego stuff laying around my house.
Yep. Red was my first one. I played a lot of Pokemon Red. Wow.
Me too. Red was my first game too.
Way back. Yep. Next email here is from Will. Good afternoon, Mike and Tyler. I'm not sure when you'll be reading this, given your travel schedules, but daylight savings time has just hit, and I am not loving it. Hopefully Will in the future is better rested. Now that you guys are nearing the end of Volume 2, which I believe ends with Generation 7, I want to talk about my favorite topic, sales data. Oh, give me those sweet, sweet graphs. Specifically, I want to look at how each Gen 6 console and handheld did. I always find this exercise interesting because oftentimes our perspective of how well a console was doing is colored by anecdotal experience. We also find that some consoles did better in particular regions instead of being evenly distributed globally. The why behind that is always fun to explore too. In a future email, and when you guys actually finish the book, I'll send an email on Gen 7. All the data here was pulled from VG charts, so without further ado, here are our contestants. Sega Dreamcast, 1998 to 2001. The Dreamcast sold a total of 8.2 million units, which is actually slightly less than the Saturn. The Saturn's sales were heavily concentrated in Japan, roughly 65% of all sold, while the Dreamcast is better distributed. They sold 3.9 million in North America, or 48%, 1.91 million in Europe, 2.25 million in Japan, and 0.14 million, so 140,000 in the rest of the world. Basically, the Dreamcast was a minor phenomena in America and Japan, and not many other places. Sony PlayStation 2, which was manufactured from 2000 to 2013. Wow, that's a long time.
It's a long time.
The PS2 sold a ridiculous 157.68 million units. The PS2 is widely considered to be the best-selling console of all time and lived to adolescence. As a result, its sales are fairly evenly spread out. You have 53.65 million sold in North America, 55.28 in Europe, representing 69% of all units sold. Japan adds an additional 23.18 million units, which before the Switch was the most of any non-handheld console ever sold. I realize the Switch is also handheld, so it gets interesting. What's really crazy is their rest of world sales, which sits at 25.57 million units, accounts for a full 16% of all consoles. In terms of their predecessor, the PS2 surpassed the PS1's extremely high count of 102.5 million units as well. The 10 years between 1995 and 2005 must have been great years for bonuses at Sony's gaming division, except I think that's not really a thing in Japan. Now we move on to the Nintendo GameCube, which was manufactured from 2001 to 2007. Despite all the fan love and high-priced collector's market, the GameCube really didn't sell that well. Clocking in at 21.74 million units, it finished third in the sixth generation. When you consider that the original Xbox was basically shut out of a market, that's pretty bad. The distribution may surprise you. A full 12.55 million units were sold in North America, or roughly 58% of all consoles sold. The European Union purchased 4.44 million units, and Japan came in with 4.04 million units to make up most of the remaining 42%. The rest of the world comes in at 0.71 million units. This represents a nadir for Nintendo in their home market in terms of percentages, although the Wii U technically sold fewer units. It's interesting to me that both the Xbox and GameCube are primarily NA-driven phenomena in terms of nostalgia. The GameCube sold worse than the Nintendo 64 by quite a bit, representing a drop-off of almost 13 million units, because the N64 sold 32.93 million units. Wow, I didn't know that the GameCube didn't sell as well as the N64.
I did not know that either, but I love my N64, so I feel fine with it. You know what I mean?
Microsoft Xbox, 2001 to 2009. Last, but figuratively and literally not least, it is the original Xbox, which outsold the GameCube at 24.65 million units. Xbox actually came in second, only losing to Sony by about 133 million consoles. Perhaps unsurprisingly, 15.77 were sold in North America, representing a full 64%. The European Union brings up most of the rest at 7.17 million units sold, or 29%. The Xbox actually outsells the GameCube in the rest of world at 1.18 million sold, but performs dismally in Japan, selling only 0.53 million in total. The Xbox does not have a predecessor to measure against, in case that wasn't clear from the disproportionate amount of time Kent spends on its creation story in the book. I'll briefly touch on the Game Boy Advance, which had no serious competition this gen. GBA is currently Nintendo's, air quotes, worst performing handheld with 81.51 million units sold, which says a lot about how well their handhelds sell. Almost half were sold in North America, with Europe and Japan nearly splitting the other 50%. I'll do a full breakdown when there's actual competition for Gen 7, probably in separate emails due to the length of this one. My biggest takeaway here is that the North America market had a much higher percentage of its consumers choose something other than or in addition to the PS2 compared to other places. This is a trend we see throughout most of the generations. I wonder why. Mike, if you didn't rage quit reading my email by now, then take a breath. Well done. To both of you, I say, keep up the great work. Will from the Lone Star State and not Ohio.
Well, I didn't rage quit because Tyler read it. Did you feel like rage quitting at any point, Tyler?
I didn't. No, this was, it had me riveted, just glued to the screen here to read these charts and graphs.
We love numbers. We're all about the numbers on this podcast. You know,
that's true.
Number stuff, math things, math blaster.
Love math.
All right.
Blast and math.
Blast and math. So here we go. This is the last email of the day. The subject line is Gamecraft Brewery. And this is from Joe from San Diego. Hey gamers. Bit of a long email here, but I remember a while ago there was a talk of a gaming themed brewery. Well, there's actually one here in Southern California called Gamecraft Brewing. It's in Laguna Hills, which is about an hour south of LA and an hour north of San Diego for those unfamiliar with California geography. Next time you both find yourselves in LA, you should check it out. They have beers such as the Umbiron, instead of Umbrion, that's fun, Schwartz beer, and the John Marsden. They also have Twitch streams on TVs on the walls and a small room to the side dedicated to tournaments. Oh, and their flights are delivered on Triforces.
Wow.
It's a gamer's paradise. As long as you're over 21, of course. Now for something completely different. I recently played through Pokemon Arceus and had a blast, but was often thrown off by how bad the graphics and overall presentation of the game was. It looks like a Wii game. It really held the game back for me. The Pokemon franchise makes more money than Marvel, DC, and Star Wars, so they have the cash to make something on par with Breath of the Wild. So my question is this. At what point does the whole, quote, gameplay over graphics concept start to fall apart? Thank you for making my long commutes more enjoyable. Joe from San Diego. You know, there is a certain amount of jankiness to Pokemon Legends Arceus, as in, like, when you get too far away from a bird Pokemon, it starts flapping very, like, aggressively, like, in 2 frames. But it never really bothered me, personally, and I think it's because the graphics thing never really gets to me because I think I'm used to playing on low specs just with my PC right now. But also, yeah, it's going to take a lot graphically for me to stop playing a fun game. It would have to be like performance graphic issues for me to stop playing a game. And even then, like, does the bird flapping in 2 frames bother me in Legends Arceus? I mean, yeah, it's noticeable, but it's not going to make me stop playing the game. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, I think that a fun game is a fun game, and I know that's sort of like that is a popular stance to take, like, well, graphics don't matter. And while I agree with that to a certain extent, I think it's also okay to be disappointed, especially when you know that, like, it's not the way it is because of a lack of resources, right? Like, when you see a small indie game and the graphics aren't great, but the gameplay is good, you're like, great, I'm glad you focused on gameplay over graphics because you have a limited amount of resources, and that's the distribution I want. When you have limited resources, I'd rather more resources put into the gameplay and less into the graphics and presentation. When you get to a game like Pokemon that has basically unlimited resources, or should have unlimited resources, that breakdown starts to feel a bit worse when it's like, when you can tell they put more in, that they didn't put a lot into everything, right? Like, they don't have to choose, it feels like. And maybe I'm unfamiliar with video game development, but I don't think that the same people who make the gameplay part are, like, being pulled off of making art, right? Those are different people. And it's not that Pokemon doesn't have the money to fund full art teams to make great art and a full gameplay team to make great gameplay. They have the money to do it, and they should, and that's what feels bad. It feels like they don't do it because they don't have to. So game's fun, graphics don't matter, but also I'm a little bummed that they didn't do a better job, you know?
Yeah, it's noticeable too. Like the bird flapping thing, that happened in like the first 20 minutes of me playing the game, and I was like, oh man, because I had the same thought that Joe did, where it's like, Breath of the Wild is such a smooth game. Like, how did it just not turn out that way? And my guess is there's something going on with the game systems in Pokemon that make it so in order for them to do certain things, they had to have that weird lagginess. But that was also the number one reason in a lot of reviews for Legends Arceus that it got, like, downvotes, was this.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see what happens with Scarlet and Violet, because I really hope they clean those games up and make them smoother, because it's going to be kind of a bummer for sure. I mean, also, I play older games from my childhood, like N64 games like Mario Kart and stuff, and those look terrible now. And it's nostalgia that lets me not be bothered by it, I think.
Yeah.
But that's a really good question and a great email. And I think that's it for today. That's our whole show. So we'll be back. Yeah, this is a long one. We'll be back next week. Hopefully with some more of this book about movies and games.
Which is great. I love talking about video game movies. I saw Uncharted this past weekend, and my hot take is that it was good. I thought it was fun. That was really good.
Oh, a spicy take from Tyler. All right. We'll talk about that next week. If you want, you can send us an email at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. You can join our Discord either through the email, or you can go to my Twitter page at Mecoletta, MECOLETTA. Click on the pinned invite at the top of my profile, and that will be an invite that never expires. And you can join the Discord that way. You can also follow Tyler on Twitter at SneakerElf, ELPH. I think that's it. Do you want to say bye to everybody, Tyler?
Yeah. Goodbye, everybody.